Hello and welcome to the Equinox celebration. How do I sound? Sounds like the gain is just a little bit high. Can you hear me? There's a chat going on, so if you can hear me, would you just say hello in the chat? That would be great. Hello, hello, hello. Great, you can all hear me? Perfect. And we have a phone call listener in, all right. Perfect. And you're probably a little surprised by my email just a little while ago that said, hey, this is my last fall equinox ceremony. Okay, Bridget's here. I'm gonna put Bridget as a panelist so that she can then take care of the chat. All right, so Bridget, hi Bridget.
Hi everyone.
And Bridget's gonna be taking care of the chat so that if you have questions, she can kind of keep a track of them in the chat and answer them for you. Because I'm sure many of you here are new to wind work, and there's many of you who aren't new to wind work. And let's hop in. And as you can see, the color of my first slide was black and white. And what was that about? Well, yesterday the winds reminded me that this day is really a black and white kind of day. If you're in the autumn, so you're living above the equator, then there's still 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness. And if you're living below the equator, again, there's 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness. And one of the articles that came up on my wall today to support this talk is that scientists are finally catching up with the shamans, and they're seeing that all time is living in this swirl. And so for some of you, it might really relate to, what am I harvesting this year? And for the rest of you, it might be like, well, what am I getting ready to plant? And we're not here to judge that, you might be set to below the equator, or you might be set to above the equator. So I had called this the autumn equinox, and I think there was a partial favoritism towards that because I was born in the fall, and I love the fall. So, but for today, we're going to look at the energetics of when there's 12 hours of light and when there's 12 hours of darkness, because the winds have shown me that in this half light and half dark space, there is a potential to slip between the two hemispheres, if you would, to affect changes in your life. And for those of you who don't know me, I forgot to put a little get to know Renee type of thing here, but I'm Renee Baribeau, and I'm the award-winning Hay House author of Winds of Spirit. And it is an incredible book whose time has come. And why I say that is 10,000 years ago, people were wind believers and they had relationships with the elements of nature. And over the last 10,000 years, we've kind of lost our way with it. And it didn't happen this election, and it didn't happen, when anything. It happened, it's been happening gradually. And over the last 50 years, it's really sped up. People have started to leave the churches and leave the ways and leave nature behind. And this is evidenced in so many different ways. And you look around you, kids with their iPads and things like that. And it's time that we reconnect with the essential tools that nature has to offer to us so that we can learn how to cut out all the extraneous noise, cut out the bantering, if you want to. And so that then you can start to go inside deeply and start to understand how you're sourcing. And that's what this call is about. It's not a big, long, deep dive into wind work, although trust me, every time we invite the wind in, and some of my wind believers on this call would tell you, is that it's more about some basic tools that you can take out and use today. And so we're going to talk about the black and white, the winter or the summer. And they're very, very important. We're going to look at some problems, some solutions. And of course, I would not be doing my job if I didn't make a couple of bonus offers at the end. So I'm going to do that. Know that. I want to be very transparent about it. I'm going to make you a great offer at the end of this class that hopefully you'll not be able to pass up. And then we are going to enter the gap between season, and we're going to utilize these skills to bounce into the next cycle of your experience. And then we're going to, in that process, we're going to align to our spin axis. And you might want to know what our spin axis is. So let me just get that right out of the way now. So when I started looking at the compass and I got to 3050 BC, there was a piece of lodestone floating in a bowl of water, and there was the lodestone had this tendency to point north and south. Well, as we, couple of hundred years later, or a couple thousand years later, when we started to create compasses, there was a piece of paper with a pin through it, a rope through, a string through it, holding it. Well, that same rope, that same center pin lives within us. And that was shown to me really clearly in a meditation journey I was doing when I was in Mexico one time, shown that we are our awakening compasses. And so the spin axis that we've been talking about a lot in the last year or so in the wind clan work is about this magnetic, invisible magnetic pole that goes up to the heavens and down through the center of your being, down through, comes out and attaches into the earth. And this is what allows you to have your own individual magnetic field. And then you know how your energy bubbles go around there. And I don't know what level you are, but for all intensive purposes, there is an axis mundi that keeps you tethered to this earth. And some of us who like to live more in the etheric levels, this would be a really good time to align to that, because even if you like to go up and channel, the information that you're going to get when it's anchored into the earth is going to be a whole lot easier to access and become more practical. And after all, I'm the practical shaman, so for me, it's all about the practicality of all of this. Truth be told, I just opened Sacred Space and we're going to do it again together. And when I did it outside, the west wind was so excited to come. Then I did it again when I had that introductory music playing. And what it was showing me is that we're going to go in a very unusual pattern today. We're going to go to the north. We're going to go to the south, because the north and the south, when there's equal light and dark in the day, they are that axis mundi that we were just talking about that holds the half light and the half dark space. How's that for something a little bit different. So if you're used to opening sacred space, going around in a circle, stay with me today and let's open to the north first, because that's the season for these are the two seasons we're heading to, no matter where you are. And so they're going to hold the space, and then we're going to call into the east, and we're going to call to the west. In the south, it's already showing me how important it is going to be in on this call today. And welcome. And I happen to be facing north with my back to the south, the east to my right, and the west to my left. That's kind of a very interesting juxtaposition that I wasn't even thinking of when I started. I called this separating the wheat from the chaff. And I think I'm always making up and I'm being so clever. But what it turns out is that throughout history, the wind has been involved with separating the wheat from the chaff. And so there's no small wonder that we're here and that title came, and as I'm guided in following these directions. And what this means is that, as in farming, when the grain is separated by the wind coming up and the heavier particles falling to the earth and the wind taking off the extraneous part, that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to transmute the energy that as we need it for our current season ahead. So that means whatever that our current cycle is ahead. And so, how are we going to do that? Well, since we're being on a shamanic path, we're going to do it with a journey at the end. But we're going to do a little personal work before that, and then we will finish with that. And again, if you have questions, certainly put them in the question box, and Bridget will answer them. So chaff comes from Middle English, and so it was all about what was blown away in the fall and the chinks into the basket. So the wind-assisted process separated the wheat from the chaff is called winnowing. And the grains with almost no hull are called naked grains. And so we want to get down to our own naked grains. And why do we want to do that? Well, sometimes our naked grains are seeds we're going to plant for something new, or they're food for the winter, or maybe we want no grains in our field next year at all. Maybe we don't want to plant any seeds, and that's okay too. So we're going to get to work with those, and this is what we're going to do. And so before you give up what is not needed, you have to separate it. And I loved this picture that I found. There's always a little work to do. And yesterday in the Shaman's Cave call, we talked about balancing the light and the dark. And this might be balancing the work and the not work. And I think it sounded like Sandra was saying, all right, we've done enough work, let's move on. But that's not at all what she was really saying. She was saying, we don't need to slump around in the dark. We can say, okay, I got to do a little hard work here because I want to live in the light. And that's what's more important. So one of the questions of the hardest work I always find is, what is the question that I want to ask of the harvest or the spring planting? What questions? And I think that, and this is one of the things that I teach in the windwork basis, is that we create based on what we need. And these needs, our essential needs, are so very different. And this is why I might create a new Subaru in the driveway, and you might be happy with an old Ford with a top down. There's no judgment on it, but we create from what we need. And I like a car why do I need this? Because I'm lazy. I don't like to have to go to the service station a lot. I'm not one to tend to the car. I work with it, and after 3 years, if I can turn it back in and give it to somebody who's going to take care of it for the next 10 years, that's great. And there's no judgment on whether or not I want to drive a new car or an old car, but it's based on more like I'm really busy and this is what I need. And so the questions, right? The questions we ask will get us to, do we need wheat berries, that we're going to plant in the spring? Do we need edible grains for the winter? A fallow field. Sometimes when you're at the end of one season, you have one big cycle season, there is a gap, and we're going to work in that gap today. But some of you might find that, wow, I'm winded, I need a break. Like maybe you've just finished a book, or you've just finished teaching a class, or you've worked really, really hard and you're retiring, or you've worked really, really hard in your life and you're ready to rest. And so sometimes this rest, this fallow field, is what we need for a whole growing cycle. What we're growing, this expanded rest state. Sometimes we're harvesting bulbs for replanting, and sometimes we're going to have a second harvest in the fall if you're in the fall states. So like, what do you need? Do you need to winnow? Do you need to separate? Do you need to spend the next season separating out? I can't answer that for you. What I would suggest is that I invited you to get some pen and paper before. It was in your email. So hopefully that you have some pen and paper nearby you, and just take a minute to answer these questions. What's no longer serving me? What's keeping me from the harvest? What do I need? What needs to shift? Do I need a year of rest and renewal? What needs to be separated? And take a minute to write that down. Mm. Mm. That was very high tech of me. I was mostly very excited. Oh, I keep myself amused. I thought, whoa, it'd be nice to have a little music while we are writing. Thank you. I think I'm funny too. So those of you who are listening, and there's quite a few of you listening, and quite a few of you registered will be listening later, and you can come over to the Wind Clan and share your ideas. But what were some of the questions that you started to write down for the harvest? What questions are you going to ask of the harvest or of the reseeding for yourself during this journey that we're about ready to take? Did anyone get any ideas? You can write them in the in the in the questions here in the chat box. Anyone? How can I stay motivated in the cooler months with my outdoor nature practices? Wow, that's an interesting question. Let's see, there's something up here in the Q&A. How is it how to have freedom to travel overseas? Someone's is too private to share, that's okay. Private questions are good. You could keep them private, and let's talk about the sacredness of this work. One of the things when you have this journey that we're going to experience together in a little bit here is that you may want to hold the essence of it for a little while. It's like sometimes, like I was always a blurter outer. Oh, I just had this awesome experience. You've got to hear it. And I dissipated the experience in the blurting it out. And so sometimes holding these sacredness is like perfectly aligned. Oh, a question on needing a year of rest and renewal really resonated coming out of a year of grief. Yes, and let's talk about grief for a second, is that in our fast-paced society, we expect people to grieve at lightning pace like we're doing everything else. In some of the older traditions, women would wear black for an entire year if they lost their spouse. And this was to signify that, hey, I am grieving. Anything goes. And so this idea of a fallow field, and it doesn't have to be, it could be grieving the loss of a career, a person, an animal, your health. It could take a whole year to grieve the loss of your health in order to decide, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do? How am I going to plant seeds now? Or how am I going to harvest anything after this year of barren and hard loss? Someone thinks that it's time to part ways. So how do I be alone in the house? That would be the question. How do I be alone? How do I bring about this change? Right, what I'm seeing from this is like that you're answering your own question instead of asking the wind for guidance about how would this look if I parted ways with my housemates. So often we want to ask and answer our own question, which takes out the magical space of the winnowing, the wind coming in to show you those, so show you how that could be. How do I find the energy and creativity focus to get back to writing following a year of grief? So how about, what would that look like if I had the energy and creativity to focus on writing? I like that little reframe. Sometimes these questions, and we spend a lot of time in my Windwork Basics in the Shift Network class that I'm going to do later this fall about there's going to be a whole class on how do I ask the right question? Is my question big enough? And so are there any more before I kind of, and how do I pay attention to listen to my body? What parts of the dream do I keep and what do I throw away? Oh my word, these are just incredible. I'm going to cry. These are incredible questions. Bridget, don't you think? How do I balance my joy in nature with grief for loss in nature? They just are awesome questions. And And I think that I can just tell by the nature of the questions, we are going to have a really powerful journey coming up here. And there's, and, and Bridget is saying that there's no fear in any of these questions. So, so there's a question down here. It's like, how do I partner with somebody else and keep the parts of myself? Is that correct? Am I getting that? And we can clarify these later, but for those who are going to listen to it later and who don't get a chance to put in their questions, hopefully some of these questions also will resonate with you. And here's a hard one, and I, it comes from somebody that I know personally who's been tending to the health of, she's a caregiver. So how do I be in right relationship with my caregiving and also take care of my own needs? How would it look like if I could strike that balance between caregiving and tending to myself? That's a really difficult one that I hope that there's an answer for you when we get to our journey. I think there is like some just powerful seeds here. There's some powerful wheat here that we're going to get to work with. Keep going in the chat if they've come up, and Bridget will be there. And the first thing that I'm going to talk about in answering this, so you can see where this wind work is all about, is we have to make the shift between the old machine-based idea to the nature-based cycle of how we are operating in this world at the moment. So since the industrial age, and before that, since we kind of went more at the time of the industrial age, we became machines doing instead of human beings living. The doing part took over, where we lived our life based on this at a glance calendar. And so look at those lines and those days and those blocks and those, I mean, and then just imagine how you can now beat yourself with this calendar when you don't feel like it's in alignment with how you want to live and structure your life, because it's not. Shamans have known forever that we are nature. We're not separate from nature. But this block calendar, this last 10,000 years have been about disassociating us from nature. And so here we are now. At least the church was a thread that held us together. And when we got rid of these structured religious practices, we were without borders and without a nature-based plan in order to how to manifest and how to create in this alternative structure. So a lot of you might have these businesses and these practices that you want to do in your life, and you're still basing it in the doctor's appointment calendars instead of a nature-based cycle of how you want to live your life. Yes, I have several calendars too, and there's not a way from that, but what I've started to do is I've started to look at my life in terms of a nature-based cycle. And so the people who have taken this wind works with me, and several of them who are here have been doing this now for years, because it's not like a one and done class. It's like, how do we get reminded every fall to get rid of the wheat from the chaff and allow what is no longer serving us to rot in the field, so that we plant stronger and hardier resistant, because we need these resilient seeds, especially for all the things that are going on in the world. So if we start to tend to our life based in this structure, then how exciting it is. At first, when I saw that the Shift Network wanted me to start my class on December 11th, I was like, oh my God, who's going to take this class? And then I thought, wow, I just never had enough nerve to start the class for December 11th, to go dark in with the solstice, hold that altar for those weeks of the festivals and then come back out when truthfully this is when, not in January 1st, but by February for the embolic, that we start to really bring those seeds out, those into the spring. So it's really, to me, it's like, yes, this is so perfect. And so there's a new phrase that you're going to see from me called time bending. And what time bending is it's how we move from the linear calendar into the cycle is by bending time. And shamans have always known that you can step outside of this consensual reality. And what another post showed up today about, like, all time is going on now. So you can borrow some from your past and borrow some from your future and start to bend time into this cyclical calendar. And why is it important to do it in the fall and in the spring for this equinox, these 12 hours of darkness, 12 hours of light? Because there is, when I was doing the Hembleche many years ago, and that's when I sat on the mountain for 3 days and 3 nights, one of the gifts that I was shown was that there is a moment in this time, this time space, where the day resets itself for the next day. It wasn't this idea like, let's make the calendar this way. There's an actual gap. And during this equinox, we can enter into the gap and make the shift from, I don't want to be on a linear calendar anymore. I want to move into what Renee's talking about, is this cycle of nature experience, where that I can start to plot and plan with the help of spirit a life that goes more in harmony with the cycles of nature. Give me a hoorah over here, or a yes, 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 if you agree, because I think that it's really important that if you can't buy into this idea that we want to move from this linear into the cyclical, then yes, some woo-woos, come on. Absolutely, that this is where we've been stuck. And this is what has not felt right to us as nature-based practitioners for a long time. So this is the work that we're going to do today. We're going to step into that place, that gap, and start to see what the wind wants to inform us about what we're separating, what needs to stay with the dense calendar, what seeds can we take into this next experience, whether it's planting, seeds for the spring or taking some grains into hibernation. Good, I'm glad that everyone's thinking this is a good idea. Well, so far from what I hear. So time bending, which is going to be another big part of the Shift Network class later this fall, it allows us to find the gaps between time and space. Hooray, hooray, hooray. And we found this accidentally, by the way. I couldn't tell you that my best thinking got us here, but what we found in the last Wind Basics class, which I'm going to offer you an opportunity to do at a home study with some guidance from me, was that we found, quite accidentally, is that there's a space between what wobbles and what doesn't wobble. And in that space between what's wobbling in your life and what's not wobbling is this little place that you can go to and shift your experience. Whoops. So let's get on with it, because this was really absolutely an equinox blessing and ceremony instead of a big long teaching from Renee. You can do that, and hopefully you'll get intrigued enough to do it with us there. So this is about the ceremony, and we're going to call upon a wind. And I asked, well, we're going to pull a wind from the wind sack. And for those of you who are new with us, so the wind was carried in bags and in caves and all of these places. And so this wind whistle, which is being made for this work, and this is I call my birthday wind whistle. It comes out at my birthday. and goes back away. And my birthday's in October, so it's arrived early in time for this. And we pull a wind, and they're all described in the back section of Winds of Spirit. So you can just open to a wind and have a reading, or you could call from a wind. Oh, thank you. Somebody said this teaching is such good stuff. Yes, 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 I agree. I'm laughing. Wow. So what is we're being offered to is Equito. And excuse me if I tell you just a quick little story so you know who Equatel is, because I can never quite say it right, is it is the Aztec wind god. All right. And so the places where I started to listen to the wind was first on the bluffs at Evie's Landing in Washington at Whidbey Island, which I have a second home there, and I'm blessed. And because I asked, how can I possibly write a book when I need to go back there time and time again? So a friend bought a home there, and so I get to use it. And how cool that is for me, because if in my mind I would have asked the question, how can I buy a place on Whidbey? And instead, when I asked the question, how can I have a place to write here? The universe gave me a different answer than I was looking for. So therein goes the question asking process to leave room for grace and spirit. Well, then I was in Mexico and I heard this wind instrument and I said, I have to have it. And so the long story short, I bought one, found a sound scientist by some obscure way, and he introduced me to a whistle maker outside of Mexico City who started making these wind whistles. We speak in Google Translator. He doesn't speak a word of English, but he is an anthropology student. And we started shipping these wind whistles across the border. And as soon as we started shipping them before the book went to press, they uncovered Icatel's wind temple in Mexico City, feet from where I started to hear the wind whistle being played. So if you think that this is just stuff that I make up in my spare time, I don't know. There's been too many signs, too many things that have shown that there's something way to this wind work that we're birthing. And my guess is in 200 more years, we're going to know a lot more about the wind than we do right now. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to call upon Icatl, the Aztec wind god of passion, who is going to, his specific thing is about rising from the ashes. So isn't this interesting? So we have the wheat that we're separating from the chaff, okay? So this is the winnowing that happens when you're holding up some wheat you just harvested, that the wind comes through and takes off what's no longer needed, and the denser stuff falls to the ground. Well, in this particular case, what I'm thinking is that what's gonna rise is from what you are giving away. Wouldn't that make sense? If so, we have Equatel coming and what's rising from the ashes. So what is rising from what you are giving up? Who could have imagined that? I couldn't have. Bridget, could you have? Maybe she could have. So let's call, yes, he's known as the winged serpent. So let's call to Equatel, and we're going to call to him in a certain way. And then I was instructed, because if I'm listening, I get instructed. I'm going to drum a journey for you, and I can't drum and whistle at the same time. So let's call to Equatel first, and we're going to ask to better formulate our question. And we're going to go to our harvest or to our planting field, and we're going to stand there with all that we're willing to give up in our hand. And we're going to spread our fingers and see what we're separating. We're going to give what no longer works to the wind. And then we're going to find that place where we where the wobble and the not wobble are, and we're going to align ourselves to that gap, and then we're going to bounce between one cycle and the next. Are there any questions before I start? And before I start, I just want to call out to Sadie, who's on this call. I don't know if she knows this, but a long time ago, years and years ago, for those of you who are starting out in your business, I was doing a call for, I think it was a vision board class. And Sadie was the only person on the whole call. And so when Sadie was the only person on the whole call, they're like, well, no one came. It's just us. And I did it anyways, just as I would have done it anywhere. And that's today the most downloaded call on my whole entire website. It's been downloaded and shared 50,000 times. So you never know what that one call or that one question is going to lead you to. So I adore you too. So what cycles are you bouncing between? That's a great question. For some of you, you might be bouncing between the fall harvest heading towards the winter. For some of you, you might be bouncing towards the spring, towards the summer. Oh, Merge is here too. And what does that mean? So, and some of you might be bouncing from something that's not related at all to the harvest or the spring equinox. You might be bouncing between grief and not grief. You might be bouncing between your employment life and your new non-employment life if you're at the end of a retirement. So I don't want to limit to the fall, to the winter, or to the spring, to the summer. I want you to know that there's equal light and equal darkness. So maybe that's your question. What am I bouncing between? So that you get really clear on that, and then we'll take that bounce will be that drum beat when we're coming back, and I will actually say, now bounce. All right? So the directions are, I'm going to go through it and I don't like to talk a lot during the journey because then my friends tell me, you talked through that whole journey, Renee. And I don't want to do that. So I'm going to we're going to call to Equator, which how we do that is we connect to the center of the earth because we're looking for that spin axis. We call to Equator to come in through the top of the spin axis, and then we create a big energy bubble for everybody on this call, so that everybody who's on the call now, and all the people who are going to hear the call later, and all the people who need to find their way to this call. So that's 3 wind whistles. Then I'm going to start to journey. And so Equator is with us, and we're going to go to our harvest or our planting field or wherever you're standing in your life now. Somewhere nice, I hope. Ask what you're separating. You're going to hold out your hand so that you can actually start to feel the winnowing from the wind. We're going to let the chaff go with the wind. And we're going to then align our spin axes to the center of the magnetic field so that we can feel what's wobbling, not wobbling. And in that space, when we have that perfect alignment, we're going to bounce between one cycle to the next. I'm very excited. Are you ready to go? Oh, Bridget says it helps for her to think of herself as actually being that compass. So that might be helpful to you. In case you didn't know, Bridget's, an actual paid assistant that I have. Not paid a lot, but she still gets paid, and that feels right. And as we grow, I'm sure she'll get paid more. I try to be very transparent, by the way. All right, let's call to Ixotel, the wind god from the Aztec wind god. So aligning yourself in through your spin axis into the center of the earth. let's all call to Equatel. He's coming down. And let's create a big energy bubble. Imagine us all holding space together, holding hands in this lightness and this darkness. And find yourself in nature. Either a harvest field or a field in the spring that's ready to plant. And look around. The winds of spirit are here. What is your question that you want to ask the winds? Hold that question out in your hand. What are you separating from? And let the winnowing begin. Let all that does not serve you float away, be carried on a gust. Let it dance away, but give it to the wind. Give it to Equatel. Let it go. Don't try to pick it back up. Let the wind choose. And now look down at your hands. What is left? Are there grains to put into your silo for winter? Are there seeds to plant? The wind carry everything away. Are you standing there with a fallow field in your hand? Or something else? Now, glide with the wind. Maybe you get in your sailboat. Maybe you get on your magic carpet ride. You're going to take those grains or those seeds or that emptiness, and you're going to take it with the wind. Let the winds of passion carry you to put this treasure somewhere safe. And once you put that treasure somewhere safe, find yourself some solid ground to stand on. And now you're going to allow, or you could invite the wind in to allow an unwinding to happen. It's going to start at the top of your head, and the wind is going to move through you counterclockwise. And it's going to unwind all the questions you think you have, all the things you think you've harvested this year. It's unwinding and unwinding counterclockwise into the belly of the earth like a tornado's funnel. And when you're in that place that all of that energy has drained down, look around you. Where is the wobble? Where's the movement? And where's the not movement? Maybe it's dark and light, this 12 hours of light, 12 hours of darkness. You're standing between the light and the dark. And anchor your spin axis in this still place between what's light and what's dark, what's cold and what's hot, what's day and what's night. And center yourself there so that you feel strong. And bounce. Bounce into the next. And now we're going to come back. And I'm going to blow the wind whistle, so that's a smooth bounce. In case some of you are still a little bit out of there. Come fully back into your body, into this room, into this day. And feel your alignment. And if you're ready and you want to share, maybe you could raise your hand and know that other people will hear this. So if I call upon you and you want to share, let me know, and I will unmute you. You have to raise your hand. I don't know how to do that. Bridget, you know how to do that? Anyone? Oh, there's 2 hands raised. Hold on. Oh. Megan? I think I have to. Can you speak?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
I can.
Great. I found myself in a cave, and the only thing I could anchor myself to that wasn't moving was the floor of the cave. It was massive and rock. And so I used my axis to anchor myself. And when you said bounce, I wasn't quite sure how to do that, but I just gave it a shot. And I found myself, I have a lot of visual ability, and I found myself moving forward in the cosmos in multiple bodies and through multiple dimensions. It was very beautiful. I don't know what will come of it, but it was amazing, and I still feel it coming back. The potential is a immense feeling of potential is what I feel now, and connected to worthiness, which is fantastic. So thank you.
Look forward in the next season to see. One of the things about wind work I would just like to tell people is that a lot of times it's in retrospect you see how your life changed, or all of a sudden you have movement in an area that wasn't moving before. So there's a lot. So one of the things is I never tried to define it. I mean, it was interesting that you said in your earlier question that you're deciding between how to show up in multiple businesses. Well, look at, you just got a multiple universe situation.
Right.
So I would just be with that, like, okay, you can do this.
Yeah.
And that's what I would take from it. I mean, we'll be.
Thank you. I agree. I feel that completely. It's quiet but exciting. Very exciting.
Very quiet there, where when you find that space.
Yes.
We're just learning, because again, it came to us really in the last work that we just did in the wind work basic.
I'm so amazed at this and so happy you shared it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else like to share? Raise your hand so I would know. Okay. No? Okay. Oh. Okay. All right. Hold on. Sadie. I'm going to allow her to talk. How do I do that? Okay, Sadie, you're up.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, thank you for this beautiful journey. I found myself walking on this beautiful field, which I've witnessed and seen in this lifetime. And I had this beautiful long yellow flowing dress, and I just kept moving forward as I'm seeing both sides, and I'm in the gap. I just went into tears because what's held me back is fear. And I was able to, just release that right now. And it's fear of, what's next as a 54-year-old, going into these studies that I've been doing and writing, and the fear of how is it going to be accepted by my family, and the fear of what are others going to think, like what's happened to that businesswoman that just was focused on other things. And as I was walking down the field, I just felt free. It's like, it doesn't matter, this is for me, not for them. And so just seconds before you said jump, I was already jumping. And the dress just fell beautifully around me. And I just felt hugged. I mean, like hugged. The winds were just hugging me. So yeah, thank you for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Some people said they can hear you, but not me. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
I was talking when you were talking. That awesome. Somebody else was talking about that they've always had a hard time jumping from summer to fall in their life. And in our wind mastery, or in also in the shift course, which doesn't have a name yet, I spent a lot of time talking about these 5 dynamics of wind dynamics of creation. And one of I'm kind of jumping over to there because I saw that is there's different gestators have, sometimes they stay in the sacred too long, and people who really partnership with nature, they don't want to give up the one season that they were just going into. So those are actually dynamics of creativity, of how people create over and over again in the world, and we do a lot of work with those. So this is work that you haven't probably seen elsewhere, because it really hasn't been on the planet, and we're working with it. And Sadie, thank you for being with me all these years.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Renee, for this space.
Okay. Oh, there's lots of new messages. So let me see if people. Oh. So one of the things that I just want to caution you against is somebody who wants to know what it's going to look like. Well, theirs was about how does writing a book with passion look like? And what I would say was that how do you get up passionately towards your writing every day? What gives that juice? It doesn't, I mean, trust me, when I was writing a book, I got up every single day and did it the days I was passionate and the days I wasn't passionate. But the days that I was passionate about it, there's an energetic. So what might be really good juice for this person is to really tune into what feels, go to that wobble and not wobble. What is passion? What is not passion? And see when you're writing, when that wobble of the passion is and when the not wobble of the not passion is, and find that intersection between those two places and work from there. Bridget, are there any other questions I need to answer before I and we can continue this conversation over on the wind work class and the wind call. Oh, one of the things that I was reminded of, these winds, they have their way with me. They were reminding me that I didn't even touch upon who really Equatel really is. In fact, one of my friends who's a tarot master, teaches at Pacifica, said, "You're going to tackle that?" So when you go in here and read the book, you will understand better about what this energy that we've been invited in for, this half light, half dark day. Because what I didn't tell you was Equatel went to the lower world for his beloved, and brought back the beloved, which was then burnt to the ground. So sometimes things get burnt to the ground. So I really, really recommend really going to the book. And if you are interested in the book, we have a weekly book study that Bridget leads. I come on maybe once a month, sometimes more. And then we're actually going through the book, and you can jump in at any time. And it's called Winds of Spirit Book Study. Because now I'm planting the seeds. We just planted seeds today, or we just harvested some grain today. This is just the beginning, and I hope you really think about joining us over, at the Wind Clan, and really getting involved and think about taking and looking at the dates, and joining me to go dive deeper, because what I can guarantee you is if you invite this work in, your life is going to change, and you're going to be spending lots more time doing what you love. So I'm making a special offer. The home study is $99, and it's a 5-week module, and I think the code is Equinox. I haven't put it in yet. I will do it right now. And I'm going to do a live small group study so to get it kicked off sometime. I'll have to figure out when I'm going to do it too, and I'll let you know. But we're going to do it to kick it off so you can really see what you're working on as you go through this. And then, then you can join the weekly book study, and Bridget can help us work through it as well. And then I want to just point out about how beautiful the Shift Network class has given me these incredible dates that at first that I thought were like, really, who's going to come then? So what it does is it kicks off right before the Yule on the 11th. I think there's 2 sessions. Then it goes dark for Xmas, Christmas, or whatever you want to call it, in New Year's Day. And then we pick back up and go right into the beginning of February, which is the beginning of spring. And I can let you know from here, because I can guarantee this, that those people who come on this journey with me through this time will have a totally different 2020 than you would have ever known. So the weekly book study, Bridget just put the link in see, she's becoming really good. She put the link right in the comments, and I will send it out. Then the classes have affected your life. That's awesome. And really pick up the book. I mean, all of the people who have been on this journey will tell you that this is the win. This isn't me. This is information that I happened to be sitting there listening to, and I had the tenacity to write a book, and it took me a lot of discipline, a lot of focus, a lot of nights, weekends, and holidays. And other people were offered this book because the wind came and talked to them, and they missed the opportunity. Trust me, if there's some work that you're doing that's divinely inspired, if you don't do it, somebody else will. The spirits don't wait for us. If we don't say yes, they move on, because there's an agenda. The world is moving at all these different planes, and if you don't jump in, you miss it. All right? Oh, that's it. All right. I will be available over at the Wind Clan this afternoon right after this. So if you have some other comments, questions, suggestions, I'll send out the replay. And if I would suggest, if you didn't bounce, go back and bounce. This is new work, so I would love the feedback on it. And I hope you're all going to have a wonderful day and a wonderful night. Let's see. Thank you, everyone.